It is the Anfield Wrap, Neil Atkinson, joined by Josh Williams, Mo Stewart and Rob Gutmann. No squad rotation here as far as the Anfield Wrap is concerned after Plymouth Argyle 1, Liverpool Football Club 0. We are joined, or partnered more accurately, with Peloton. Peloton are the official digital fitness partner of Liverpool FC, and there's lots and lots of bits and pieces that you can find out through Peloton that involve Liverpool Football Club and also the Anfield Wrap. So if you want to get in touch with John through any means that you care to do, he will get you involved in the hashtag TAW Peloton Club. As I say, Peloton are a partner of Liverpool. This is a very big deal indeed, and you can see packages on there and on Peloton social media as well that involve Liverpool players, and they're very much worth checking out. And also we're doing a little program with them called We Score Together, through thousands of workouts across 14 plus disciplines, taught by 50 incredible instructors. If you go to onepeloton.com/blog, teams-and-challenges, there you will find out more about what we're doing, and keep your eye on Peloton full stop for everything they're doing with Liverpool Football Club over the course of the season. We're very pleased to partner with them. All right then, I've got Josh, I've got Mo and I've got Rob after Plymouth Argyle 1, Liverpool 0. I put it on the agenda so I just want the number first and foremost. How bothered by the result, not the performance, by the result are you all out of 10? 10 being Champions League final defeat, 1 being a pre-season friendly defeat. Josh Williams, you are a man for the metric.
A man for the stuff that matters.
The man for the metric. You've got your 1, you've got your 10. Give me it out of 10. How bothered are you?
Just a one-word answer.
One-word answer.
1.
1?
Yeah.
Same as a pre-season defeat?
Yeah.
Okay. Rob Gutmann.
6. 6, Neil. You wanted a 1, you wanted a 2. I'm giving you a 6. I'm annoyed, Neil.
I'm going to come back to you then. I like it, Roberto. Mo.
3. I'm going to split the difference.
Oh, Mo, you've never seen a fence you didn't want to sit on.
No.
I would say.
I honestly didn't think I'd be in the middle, to be honest.
Splinters on that, man.
So we've got a 1, we've got a 3, we've got a 6. Roberto.
Where were you, Neil?
Sorry.
Where were you?
I'm a combination of 2 and -4 because the first thing I did within 10 minutes of the final whistle was book a weekend off. And it was, so, you've got the personal Neil and then football Neil. So football Neil is maybe a little bit closer to you than to Josh, and I'm actually struggling to separate performance, if I'm dead honest.
Yeah.
But it's maybe a little bit in there. But personal Neil was straight away like, well, that's great news for the first weekend of March. I wonder whether or not I can get a sneaky 4 days away. So you've got to bear that in mind, and it's one of the complications of being the Anfield Wrap, Rob. It's in there. So go on, 6. Talk me through it.
I never liked the ignominy of early FA Cup defeat to Minnows. There's a long history. It just makes you look like, as a club and a team, like a schmuck. And I know in your agenda, the Bants factor is you want to discuss, you want to talk about that.
You don't like you're not a man who likes being bantered.
I don't like being bantered, but I have a sense of pride, Neil, as the Cockneys say.
Yeah.
I go back to the time when we went out under Rafa and Jimmy Troy dragged back into his own net.
I remember.
And as you said, it is difficult to separate out because part of what you look forward to the game is seeing lads who aren't getting regular games. My favourite Liverpool player of all time, Chiesa, getting a game. And I know we're going to go. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
No.
I can't separate it out because that's the occasion is to enjoy parallel universe Liverpool. The Liverpools are not quite as good as the first 11 Liverpool, but you get to enjoy them and you get them to progress.
And then they play the 5th round, and you want to watch them then.
Also, there's a sense of identity. I like those seasons where Liverpool, the last team that can still win the quadruple chasing Liverpool who might win the quadruple Liverpool. I like that conversation going on for as long as possible. I do get the pluses of this, and I did. I'm
not going to. It's all right. You're not a stupid man.
No, but I'm not going to take exit lightly. No, and also it was about this scale. It's confusing me as well. I think it's a lot ahead of a pre-season defeat. I don't like a pre-season defeat, by the way. I'm not calling.
Yeah, you're saying that's 3.
That's 4. Yeah.
So for me, I'm a little bit more sanguine about the whole thing. So first of all, I'm the complete opposite of Rob when it comes to quadruple chat. I cannot be arsed with it.
Absolutely.
It's boring as hell.
Amen.
And it happens every year.
There's a reason why no one's ever done it,
There's a reason why no one's ever done it,
Nathan Jones, the year that Manchester City do the treble, it's Nathan Jones managing Southampton. He manages Southampton for 14 games. Nathan Jones wins 5, loses 9. He wasn't a man for a draw. And he stopped Southampton in their tracks in the League Cup.
And you can say the name Nathan Jones in and around Hampshire, and you might actually get keelhauled for it.
Yeah.
So I'm not asked about quadruples. I take the point in terms of the games for
You'd like
those.
just to win a quadruple, surely.
No, but it's just boring. It's boring. You're talking
Not
about
at the point you win that quadruple. That'd be really good.
It's impossible to win it.
I mean, I'm almost on the line that it is impossible as well.
Oh, come on, we were within
Let the
minutes of
cameras
doing
cut to Rob's face at the point at which Josh said it was impossible. Let the cameras cut. You're going to have to edit that big back, Paddy. I want the camera cutting there and then. Go on. Yeah.
But so the idea that there were certain players who played in that game who we probably aren't going to see again this season, and some who probably aren't going to get a start again this season, that part I am more annoyed about. And to be honest, the main reason why I said 3 and not 1 is because I knew we were going to have to talk about it, and I'm going to have to talk about this game about 4 or 5 times before we're on to the next one. And it's just like, I'd rather not have to do that.
What have you thought about the first weekend of March?
Yes, I know. Trust me, I have. But so there are also caveats. I know you said the idea of going out to minnows is bad. I actually prefer going out to minnows in this context rather than going out to like a lower Premier League. Like,
What's the opposite of a minnow? A maxo.
I never thought that.
Heavyweight.
It's minnows refers to tiny fish,
Yeah,
so it's
a
the idea of a
titan.
shark or a whale.
Yeah,
A titan.
So
Plankton.
So do I prefer to go out to Plymouth than going out to Man United last year? Yes. Do I prefer going out to Plymouth when they're not managed by Wayne Rooney? Yes. Do I prefer going out to Plymouth when Arsenal have already been knocked out in the round before? Yes.
The many things I took from the Plymouth manager. One is it's a fantastic head of hair. Speaking of which, Josh Williams, why are you not with one?
Sadly, I can't grow the same beard. But yeah, I've
So stop just trying.
I'm on my way. I'm probably going to upset a fair few people here saying this because what I'm essentially about to do is throw massive shade in the direction of England's most historic tournament. But
It's had it coming.
yeah, I couldn't care less. Honestly, I couldn't. And that's within the context of Liverpool's current season. Crucially, we need to underline that part. There's a reason no team has ever won the quad. It's because it's virtually impossible. Pep Guardiola's Man City pick up 100 points at one stage and they still don't win the quad. So I think I've always felt it's kind of this... It's like chasing the end of a rainbow.
It's a white whale.
It's kind of, it doesn't really, it's like a unicorn, mate.
Yeah, but there's a badge of honour of being in for it, though, right? It's a badge of honour. Let's be honest, we still refer to the near quadruple season. Yeah, and I know we wouldn't. I never felt we were going to win a quadruple. Actually, I did in the last week. There was a real chance. I think we were probably up to 25% chance of winning the quadruple. We got the 2 hard ones out of the way, which is the shitty ones because you put out weakened teams.
25% chance seems high, mate.
Yeah. Well, it is
I've won the
because.
quad.
Well, yes, because we'd had 2 in the bag coming into the last week of the season. I'm talking about. We had the FA Cup and League Cup in the bag.
Oh, I thought you meant the season.
No.
Oh,
in 21-22, we'd already bagged the FA Cup and League Cup, and then we went into the last week of the season with, I don't know, a 30% chance of winning the title, or 20, and in the European Cup probably 60% chance because we were marginal favourites. I don't know what the exact maths is, but it was within the realms of reasonable chance of winning it. But we were able to identify. It's not the actual winning of it; it's being able to identify yourself as a team worthy of being in that conversation.
Well, go on, keep going, Josh. Though ignore him.
If you can.
No, I think that's a good example though, because it's one of them where you get close, but you don't do it. You don't tend to do it, and I think in comparison to like
Man would never have got to the moon with your attitude, Josh.
Gutmann is wearing Captain Ahab's jumper.
Someone questioned whether we actually do anyway. What was I saying then? Yeah, so I think in comparison to like a Bayern Munich, for example, or an Inter Milan, they don't have to contest for 2 domestic cups. It's an English thing, that. So to go for 4 competitions like that, it's only really a thing that happens in England, and it's. I'm of the belief that it probably in the long term you never actually get there, and it hinders you in the process because you don't quite make it. You end up using up your resources in, like, for example, Joe Gomez goes off. If Liverpool aren't in that if that tournament doesn't exist, Joe Gomez is fine, and we go into the next game and he's available and stuff like that. That's just a rough example, but I just think generally going into any season, we obviously want Liverpool to win the Premier League, obviously want Liverpool to win the Champions League, and for me, you kind of pick one of 2 domestic cups, and we're already in the final of one of them. So I have no interest in like in March or whatever going to like Portsmouth away or something, and then picking the team for that and then doing it again and doing it and then potentially going out anyway in the quarters or something. I just think at this stage of the season, how many games have we got in the next 15 days? What is it? 5 games.
5 and 17. I don't quite like the 5 and 15 because it involves game 1 and game 5 being the same day, if you know what I mean. So from yesterday, the final whistle yesterday, I think it's 5 and 17.
Actually, from Tottenham, then you could argue, couldn't you?
But you sort of because of the side he picks. But go on.
I just think the bottom line is we have priorities right now, and without question, if the FA Cup is 4th in the list of priorities. And given that, I think you pick a team that represents that, and the team didn't win.
Just a quick though. So if they went out against Tottenham, would your 1 be a 2, or would you still just have it be a fucking 1?
No, it'd probably be above a 2. It'd probably be above a 1, but I still.
But it wouldn't be anywhere near the 6 of Captain Ahab.
Absolutely not. No.
So I think that makes a big difference. And for me, as much as the FA Cup has more prestige within the country, I think if you ask me which one of the domestic cups do we want us to win every year, I would say the League Cup, because it's over in March. Like trying to win the European Cup when you're also trying to win the FA Cup makes life so much more difficult in terms of fixtures,
semi-final game moves.
Yes, all of that stuff.
Only that this season though, because the quarters is now gets its own separate weekend. But I think
but in general, it just makes things a lot much harder, and you've got to spread yourself thinner. And you talk about 2022. Yes, you can say that the fact that we were so close is remarkable. It's a badge of honour. What is that badge worth? Nada.
And what happened the following season, by the way?
Yes, well, this is what I was going to come on to.
The FA Cup's fault.
I was going to come on to this because the two trophies that we did win that season both went to penalties. Both went to extra time. And then you look at how we went in that run-in when we were losing players here, there. There was 3 games in a row where we lost an important player to injury. If those games had been finished in 90 minutes, do you think that would have happened? The chances of that happening were lessened. If we had gone into that final week out of the league, but with a European Cup to play, I think that obviously there were other reasons why we played the way we did in 2022.
Doesn't have a worldie, we probably win.
Yeah, but I think
Cup.
no, but even I think we.
Well, the key part is more they won the games until you get to the European Cup final. That's why I don't like the road not travelled on this one, because they won the games. It might be, for instance, if they go and get the result they get at Man City, the 2-2 draw, and they don't get the chance to psychologically put it right in the FA Cup semi-final, it knocks the confidence and they lose the next game. Yeah. You can go both ways on that argument.
Also,
so I think it's worth saying.
They won, but some of the games, a lot of the games they won, I think it was 3 or 4 in a row where they went 1-0 down and ended up winning 2-1, and it's like that takes it out of you. I think if we had been 3rd, 4th, happy and safe in the Champions League positions, but not going for the league, by the time we got to the Champions League final, we would have been in a better position to ride a Thibaut Courtois for our worldie. I just think, and then as Josh mentioned, look at what happens the season after. If we'd have won the quadruple, the season after would have been even worse. And this is the other key point.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, okay, even if it was just as bad, it's still bad.
Look at City.
I'm happy to say that it would have been a form of decline, because I think that those players gave absolutely everything. I think City, going from the treble season into last season, City are tiring.
Yes.
It's interesting that loads of City players don't play well last season, but Phil Foden does, who doesn't do much in the treble season, and Foden's found the first half of this season difficult. Seasons bleed into each other. I agree with that.
And I don't just mean from the physical, I mean from the mental. That's the thing. I think the point is that so many times, like, to take a little bit of a tangent, I watched the Aaron Rodgers documentary on Netflix.
All the sports don't count.
Listen, they will. I'll come back to this.
Who's Aaron Rodgers?
He's an NFL quarterback. Sorry, mate. But basically, he said that when he got to the top, he won the Super Bowl. I think it was 2nd or 3rd year as a starter, and he thought, I've achieved the one thing I wanted to achieve, and he thought that it was going to help him go on and to do it again and again and again. But all he ended up doing was questioning it. It's just saying, is this it? Like,
but different players have different experiences, Mo, and they don't start. I mean, if you really want to do this, they don't start the 1920 season the way they did if they don't win the Champions League final in May. They might have started the 22-23 season better if they'd have won the quadruple, because they'd have walked around and gone, we're league champions, we're European Cup winners, get a big bowl of this.
But do they start?
I still think they'd be fucked.
Do they start the 1920 season the same way if they'd have also won the league as well as the Champions League?
But this is where we
98 frigging points.
Yeah, but I think they got themselves to 97 points. I think why I don't like these conversations in any direction as someone who's got his own views on them, which is that I don't really give a fuck about the domestic cups, and then something happens that gets me excited about one of them, and then I want to win it. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm only in on the big 2. But you don't get to see the road not travelled, and I think that goes in both directions. So you never get to see the road not travelled, and I think that's a really important point, because you can't demonstrate or support any position off the back of the fact that you've got reality, and then you've got what is something that is just loads and loads of people putting theories in place.
Yeah, but these theories are based upon what we've seen from other people in that position. So,
but Manchester City do the treble and then win the league the next year.
They only win the league because everyone else kind of flaps it. Arsenal should have won the league.
Well, Arsenal got 89 points. They got 91 points. But they didn't win the league with 76 points.
Yeah, but they blew an 8-point lead.
But nonetheless, they still got 91 points.
I think I know we could do this all day, but even if you go with the argument that that there's a loading issue, which I do accept, I think clubs just have, and they have incrementally. I mean, listen, nothing happened to the load of our first team yesterday, short of you can make an argument about the Joe Gomez thing, because they all were, nowhere near Plymouth. Nothing happened because of the on the Eindhoven one. The problem happens, and you'll be right to point this out to me, is by the time you get to the semi-final and you draw not Arsenal, would it be, say, Man City in the semi-final, you're under all kinds of pressure to put the big lads out. I think if clubs can stay disciplined and keep those who need minutes right through as far as it goes and just suck it up, that's the middle ground I think you and I could possibly shake on. Let's have some fucking discipline. And I don't care if you get to the final, Salah doesn't fucking play. If you've got further games to play. Do you know what I mean?
But also,
that's
I think...
never happened.
But and also because you're managing people, you're not man. And again, this is one of those things, I'll do it again, what I've just done to Mo, to you, which is that you're talking about, this is your theory. There is the reality that we get to see over and over again, which is that when you get to a final, what happens is that Virgil van Dijk says, I captain Liverpool, if you don't fucking mind. I'd like to lift that thing up. Thank you.
Of course, I know. So it's a difficult one. I think the bottom line is, although I was annoyed by it, and I will always not want us, or will always want us to win in a cup. Now we're out. Let's celebrate the good things. I'm happy to do that.
This is hard enough, all of this, without just people dealing with actual fucking reality, rather than making up universes in their own head. How bothered are you by the performance out of 10?
3.
3, same scale.
8.
7.
Okay, why 7?
Because I think it matters for a lot of reasons, because there were lots of players who went into that game feeling like they should have been able to put themselves in the shop window for more minutes, and they failed. But not only that, I just think a lot of the makeup of the way the game played out was disappointing. So you look at some of the senior players who didn't put their hand up, who didn't help the guys around them. I felt like that was poor. I also didn't like some of what the manager did, to be honest with you, and not just in terms of the team he picks, but the substitutions. That was kind of what annoyed me the most, really. Like, I didn't like him hauling Isaac Maguire off after bringing him on.
Have you heard his explanation on that?
No.
He says there's 2 reasons, and they are reasonable, I think. He said, firstly, he was on a booking, and I thought the number of duels that the boy was having, because they were lumping long balls in, I thought it was 50-50, he'd get another one. He said, but I also had in my head that I needed an offensive substitution, and he was the only one in line that I could do to justify to put another forward on. That was his justification.
Okay, so that's fair enough, but I disagree with the idea of putting 4 forwards on, because when you've got a situation where the forwards are really disconnected from the rest of the team, you need more midfielders. You don't need more forwards. And I think that none of the forwards who were on were doing any midfieldy type things. But then you also bring on a guy in Trent Cone-Doherty who's been very good, but he's a winger. And what's the point of bringing on a guy as a winger when you've already got Luis Diaz and Chiesa on the pitch? Because then he ends up becoming a midfielder. So then he's not doing what he's probably doing. I don't think he helped the players on the pitch do what could have been done, or do what they do best in terms of how he managed it. I'm hoping, as is what's happened previously, whenever he's made a misstep, he's realised and recognised it and we don't see it again. But that's kind of what annoyed me about this game. I also feel like this is another one of those situations where there were no surprises from Plymouth. We knew what they were going to do. We knew what the crowd were going to do. We should have been able to handle it, and we didn't. And that will always be an annoyance to me, because there are lots of things about this Plymouth game, and Slot mentioned it himself, that we're going to see on Wednesday. There are lots of elements of how they played that we're going to have to deal with on Wednesday. And yes, you could say it's the different players. There's someone who started that game who's going to be starting on Wednesday. probably only one, but one of them is going to start. So
You can tell the others what it was like.
but I just,
I think the point you've just made conflicts with your 7 out of 10, though. You just said there that only one player that played.
well, no, but no, it's not. But it's one. So what I mean is that even if it's
Might be 4 subs.
you can't. Even if it's only one, that's enough. And I would have wanted to see, as Rob says, there's going to be subs as well. I would want to see that attitude from more of them, because there's going to be more than just that Everton game where you're going to be dealing with that. There's going to be more games over the course of the rest of the season. And some of those players are going to be needed in those games. Even if they're not starting, they're going to be needed to come on 25 minutes to go when it's 1-1 or it's 1-0 down. And we're going to need the whole squad to win this league. And I would have liked to see more from those guys. I felt like there was quite too many of them who were thinking about their own individual performance rather than what the team needed.
I think trying to be calm about it. It was a disjointed 11 that hadn't played together before. I think you could if you'd stop before the game and we all calm down and goes, come on, tell me, how do you think this game's going to play out? You've seen this movie before from Liverpool sides who've been fantastic, mediocre, whatever. But the game, you've seen it before. And I would have said to anyone, if I thought about it, either we score handy and probably run out winning 4-0 and they get, or 4-1, they get a goal, or it becomes a fucking horrible game because it just can, because they can defend. It's a small, tight ground, noisy crowd. Pitch is going to be a thing. No one's talked about the pitch because you're going to sound pathetic. You sound pathetic if you do, but it is a factor for elite footballers who play on bays. To play on that, and it's going to be a disjointed team. You go, we might actually only win 1-0 now. If you take the latter scenario, which I think was at least as likely as the former 4-1 scenario, then you're in the lucky realms of the gods, and that is kind of what happened. Had Harvey Elliott not been a fucking idiot, quite frankly, and stuck his hands up, they don't score. And what probably transpires is what I think 90% of us would have said watching it in the first half is, we're playing shit, but these are going to run themselves out here, aren't they? And after an hour, we'll just take the game away from them. And I think that's what would have happened. I think we'd have won 1 or 2-0 had Harvey Elliott. That might be an obvious thing to say, but it was a 1 or 2-0 game. And all we'd be saying today was, didn't think so-and-so played well, didn't think so-and-so played well. We probably patted on the back Jota for scoring one of those 2 goals, or Nunez, because it's good for Nunez to get a goal, and we'd have moved on. Perhaps, but as it is, it's what it is. It is just one of them, and it was horribly disjointed. I tried to be fair to all the individuals. I didn't. Luis Diaz got no change. Was he truly awful? I don't know. He seemed to be playing on his own on a football pitch. I wanted Chiesa to do more. Did he do anything terrible? Not really. Those who we were a bit error. People like Harvey Elliott were a bit error prone. 1 or 2 were. It was just horribly disjointed. They got their break they needed. They got something. Let's put it this way. If they were going to blow themselves out after an hour, if you gave them a goal to hang on to, it was always going to be a different game. Let's be calm about it, I suppose.
Well, so you were 8 a minute ago.
Well, I'm not happy, especially in the moment.
So you moved yourself.
That doesn't mean
you sound to me like a very mild 5.
It doesn't mean I don't care.
I'm not saying. But I'm thinking about performances. I'm saying you were an 8 on performances.
I didn't like the performance. I didn't say it's horrible, but I can be okay with it.
And it's Heidel, mate.
Well, let's put
like you're furious with them.
It's a rubbish performance. But if you'd asked me, let me go back to my first point. Did I expect? I probably expected a poor performance. I expected a performance I wasn't going to enjoy. And I'll think, that was good, Liverpool.
Well, the disjointed thing I think is fair, but I do also think that there are elements where it probably didn't need to be as disjointed. So you could look at it and say that without the Gomez injury, the midfield 3 would have been the same midfield 3 as PSV. So having just played a game together, you'd expect them to be a little bit less disjointed. Although I think Slot decided to play McConnell right back anyway, didn't he?
He did,
yeah.
So there was an opportunity for them to be less disjointed, and it wasn't taken for a couple of reasons. And so again, the reason why mine is so high is because you can look at it in isolation and say all those things that Rob said, and say it's fair. But in terms of extrapolating these performances as for something that we might need further on, that's where my annoyance level rises.
You're 3.
I think the reason I've gone for the 3 is, for me, the reason I care so much about performance is because the performance for me is what dictates your results. So if Liverpool get a win and the performance is bad, I find it hard to celebrate those wins because I don't think the wins are going to follow next week or the week after or the week after. I think in this case, the reason I give it a 3 in terms of how bothered I am about the performance is because, yes, it was bad. It was horrible. Not particularly enjoyable to watch in any way, shape or form, to be fair, but we're not going to see it again. You know, that's not going to happen again next week or the week after.
You'd hope.
You know, it's a team of players who are, as you just said, just disjointed. None of our real stars anywhere near the stadium. So yes, it was bad, but if David Moyes is sat there watching the game, rubbing his hands,
no,
all the best, mate.
But I mean, so yeah, I take your point in terms of that 11 is not going to happen again. But there might well be times, for example, where there's a game where we're going to have Tsimikas playing a left back and Chiesa will be playing ahead of him on the left wing for a 25 or 20 minute period, and they look like they were on opposite teams. Like, they did not... I'm not sure how many times they passed to each other. I'm not sure they passed to each other at all. So those bits of the performance, we might have to see again.
Well, that's my on the performances, on the performance conversation. I think there's a couple of things that I'll bring Josh back in a minute to talk about midfield, because I think it's an interesting thing to take away from the game, Mo. But for me, it's Elliott and Tsimikas are the two performances I'm most troubled by.
Yeah, agreed.
In that, I think, first and foremost, there's been games this season where Tsimikas has looked absolutely fine to be Liverpool's left back in practically any given situation, and he was a million miles away in this one from that. Elliott, and not just the usual issues for Tsimikas either. I've always got this concern he's just not quite quick enough. That was not the problem. And Elliott, you know, first and foremost, the context of the opportunity, being given that opportunity. And I think that if he was listening here, he'd be saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind that opportunity with Gravenberch and McAllister, mate. I'll be frank, and I accept that and take that point. But just to move forward with it, you know, I thought there was just some not just the penalty, and in fact, I want to almost take the penalty out. A player does mad thing in penalty area. Great defenders have done mad things in a penalty area with their hands for 2 seconds. Let's be clear about that, and being punished for it. So that's almost for me, it's the other phases of play. I've got me Elliott concerns about Mo, and because I can see a universe where you wouldn't mind using some Harvey Elliott, you wouldn't mind using some Kostas Tsimikas, and there was enough in the two performances where you can see a world where at least in the next 5 games, the manager might look at his bench and go, not sure.
And they will say, well, like you say, they'd prefer to play alongside the starters, but that's not always possible. And I feel like in that team, they should have taken more responsibility, and for different reasons. So Tsimikas, obviously Quansah was in the back line. You had McConnell playing in the back line. Once Gomez goes off, you've got Endo. So Endo's like 32, so he's an experienced player. He's still not used to playing centre-half all the time. So if you look at that back four as it was, the most experienced man was Tsimikas, the guy who you'd expect to be helping out everybody else, maybe setting the line, maybe directing traffic, maybe noticing, okay, well, they're overloading on this side at the moment, so maybe you guys move up a few yards, and just making it easier for everyone else. He wasn't doing that. And then you look at Elliott in the midfield, and it's a similar type of thing. Like, so he would prefer to have a situation where the other two midfielders aren't more worried about losing the ball, so they're not playing as progressively as McAllister and Gravenberch were. Fine, I get that. But you, as a senior player, would be able to notice that, and you should be the one making the differences accordingly. You should be the one directing those two to say, okay, I'm always going to make sure I got you I've given you an angle to make a simple pass, and then I can progress the ball. It was his responsibility to connect to the forwards, I think, personally, whether or not that was the role that he was given by Slot on the chalkboard. But we know he's young, but he is within that context, the senior man. He should be able to say, this is what the game needs, and I have to give it.
Yeah, it was poor. I think maybe they're senior players, Tsimikas and Elliott, but they're not senior. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's always a possibility with that kind of game. They get in their own heads. Like Harvey thinks, I've got to win this game on my own. I'm the best of the picks, near as damn it. I'm the playmaker, and gets in. And when it doesn't go his way early on, and it's a difficult game for him to get into because they're very competitive and the pitch, etc., he got in his own head. And it's the first time I've seen Harvey really dip his level that low, I think. There's one thing you would say about Elliott, he's a very consistent performer. And as Neil said about Tsimikas, I think Tsimikas has the one thing's been in his game this season, I think, has been consistency, and that's why on a couple of occasions he's, I think, got the nod over Robertson, and not just for rotational reasons. But he was error-strewn yesterday. He was very, very poor. I thought a lot of people are picking Endo out as the calm man of the match, if you like, in a match of no men of matches. But I thought Jarrell Quansah broadly acquitted himself pretty well. It was definitely a game for people to be looking for scapegoats, and I thought he's been a bit of a scapegoat in recent times, Jarrell, because he's often out of rhythm and he's not at his best, and he does something slightly wrong. People dig him out. It's a bit harsh considering he was our second choice right centre back last season. I thought he was very competent. On balance, though, I'd forgotten that Cone Doherty came on. It's whether we can joke whether it's like a pre-season game or not in terms of its importance. The personnel on the pitch as that game progresses gets increasingly pre-seasony. The changes were only going to make us worse. We saw it in Eindhoven, where a very competent 45 peters out into a very pre-seasony decline, where every sub is going to make you worse. Naoni is raw, and he showed it again. He showed again that players who are that young, you may get a couple of good games that suggest a bright future, and he still has a bright future, I think. But you are going to get performances like that where he's not going to look at Mabaya again. Difficult for him. Cone Doherty. I think even the idea that McConnell's this sort of like a first team player, is over. It's too much pressure on the lad. It was a compromise selection. We shouldn't forget that.
No, granted.
What you see with it, I think, Josh, is sometimes you see things in their absence, and I think what you've seen this season under Slot's Liverpool, especially, has been the primacy of midfield. And yesterday, I'd argue, in the rounds, midfield, certainly from the starting 11, midfield is the weakest area of the pitch. And I think you just sort of get that reality writ large all the way through the game. That ultimately Liverpool's shortcoming is slap bang in the middle of the park. We now know post-match that the manager said that Jones doesn't get selected because he was still feeling the effects of training on Saturday, which I think begs an enormous question about precisely what were they doing in training on Saturday, which I think, again, is where the game is as a priority. But what it meant was, I think, the absence of Jones, the use of McConnell from the outset at right back, Endo then having to drop into centre-back, McConnell then moving in. What all of that meant was, at no point did Liverpool truly feel as though they had a functional midfield or a functional way to progress the ball up the pitch, as Mo says, given the fact that Tsimikas was having a stinker. Mabaya's just plunged in at late notice into the action, and I don't think he was able to contribute progressively with the ball either. So Liverpool were just floundering. But I think what's interesting, having given that prognosis, is that the analysis is this is exactly what the heartbeat of this team is. Liverpool, and if anything, for me, as mad as it sounds, it makes an argument for me that Liverpool do need to recruit a midfielder in the summer, because Liverpool need to have 6 outstanding central midfielders that they feel comfortable with game in, game out.
Exactly, yeah. Well, this is the thing. Like in pre-season, Curtis Jones literally says that the midfield department now is the new heart of the team. Everything's going to run through the midfield, and with Slot, it's very much about dominating that centre, like a game of chess almost, where you dominate the centre of the board, and then by doing that, the opposition have to almost destabilise the cope. You get 1v1s out wide as a result of that and things. But when Joe Gomez goes off, Liverpool's midfield three, if you want, is Elliott, Naoni and McConnell. That's a very, very, very basic midfield. I mean, that midfield is not Premier League level, put it that way. No. And you're being treated like a Premier League opposition, and you're trying to play Premier League way because you're still trying to adopt the same game and all that. So,
and then the two fullbacks aren't supporting, or aren't able to support anywhere near the level that you'd like on the day.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose the senior players that you picked, and this is why I gave it 3, because for me the 3 is a product of the individual performances that were a little bit off it. I think as a team unit the performance was bad, but I didn't think that was a surprise. I think certain individuals I thought were off it, and that's, I suppose, worrying moving forward because they had no major reason to be off it. But I think the front 3 was obviously where the senior pros were, and you got to get the ball to them. So that first like 2/3 of the pitch, you're struggling because you haven't got that dominance that you've usually got. So
there's no overloads, were there, to help them? I was thinking...
No, but even like, I think to establish that level of control, this is where the technical quality comes in. That you've got to be supremely technical to play for Arne Slot. Your first touch has got to be flawless. It's going to be one of them where the opposition doesn't even think it's worth pressing you because you've got ultimate control of the ball. On a pitch like that, that's just harder. So and you're already playing with weaker individuals anyway. So if you've got someone like Trainee, James McConnell receiving the ball under pressure on a bobbly pitch, and the first touch is a little bit off. I think that happened to Neone, who's very technical. First touch was off. He puts a foot in, gets a yellow. That's because the ball just bounces in front of him. So, yeah, it's one of them games for me that obviously it was bad, but loads of reasons why it was bad. And crucially, loads of reasons why it won't keep being bad moving forward. So
I think another underrated part of it is that it was a very small team. Like, just physically, it was a small team. So in times where you are having problems with midfield, we've seen sometimes Liverpool go a little bit more direct. The keeper will play a long ball to Salah to kind of protect it or something like that and bring people in. We didn't really do that. And I mean, in theory, you could say that the forward three were probably the biggest of the, so they maybe could have done that, but it just wasn't really working. And
also the distribution to them wasn't very good.
No.
When they did try to go long, I thought there was 3 or 4 occasions, and it's not just one offender. I'm not saying it was just Kelleher. If anything, I thought Kelleher's distribution was good on the day. There was when other players were trying to sort of decide that we'll just miss it out for a minute. Bad balls going out to touch.
Yeah. And it was one of those games where the few times that we didn't work Plymouth enough, like they were happy to just sit back in their shape. And there were times when you play against teams who are packed defences, the key is to try and move them around, make them work within their shape. So then you are still wearing them out. And they didn't really move enough for me. And so that meant that the few times we were able to get in dangerous positions, they were sharp enough to get out to us. And yeah, it's a game that can happen. And Josh is right to say that you can look at it and say that based on the way that the team was made up and the circumstances and the pitch, those things, it was more predictable, and maybe those circumstances won't occur again. I just hope that there are things that everybody who was involved, players, managers, coaches, have learned from it and will take forward.
Minor concern that we've played Diaz out of form.
Yeah, but I think the picking of him was an attempt to play him back into form in a way, and it didn't really work out. Maybe the manager, on reflection, would go, "Man, that's not the way to give him back confidence." He thought just give him a game against easier opposition, get him a goal, and we'll play him back into form. I think Nunez will have been delighted he didn't start that game and didn't get to have a frustrating 90. I think it does. We'll come on to the derby and talk about why he didn't start in a sec, I'm sure. But no, he's dropped Diaz out the action to try and freshen him. I think he thinks Diaz's legs not have gone, but Diaz needs refreshing, and there was an attempt to do that, and it didn't really work. But let's see. It's a bit worrying because Diaz had such a sensational start to the season, but we can the trouble is, but even by talking about it, we sort of make it a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that Diaz is the out-of-form player.
That's fair.
Slot was very keen to point out, I think it was the Bournemouth second goal, the Salah goal against Bournemouth. He said, although he wasn't involved in the assist or the direct build-up, his run pulls 2 out of the way and opens the space for Salah to score. He was. I don't think it was just platitude or throwing honey at Diaz. I think he's saying his was as good as an assist. So we might be over-egging in a certain sense.
The penalty of PSV as well.
I think the whole thing is. This goes back to the wider, I think full seasonal point is how thankless it's been being number 9 for Liverpool over the course of the campaign. Just quickly though, Josh, last thing on it for me is I think this probably would have been the case anyway, but I think only injury is stopping Salah, Van Dijk, Konate, Alisson and Gravenberch starting the next 5. And I think Robertson, Gakpo, McAllister and Szoboszlai are starting 4 of the next 5. I don't think anyone's pressed.
Who did you say apart from the keeper then? Van Dijk, Gravenberch,
Salah. For 5 of the next 5, Salah, Van Dijk, Konate, Gravenberch. And for 4 of the next 5, Robertson, Gakpo, McAllister and Szoboszlai to start. I think that's what I think we were looking at that anyway, but what you don't take away from that is that anyone's pressed a claim, if you see what I mean, by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I agree, and that this is what I was saying earlier when it comes to priorities. You've got so many games in such a short space of time. They're all against fairly good opposition. Some of them are away from home. There's a game against City away in there. So you want to play your best team, and these are the tournaments as well that you really care about. The Champions League and the Premier League are the ones that you're asked about. So I think you go heavy in them, obviously. And I think it goes without saying that you want to win every single game. You should probably clarify that. But the thing is, you can't. You're not going to win every game ever. You have to lose here and there. It will just happen in football. And I'm aware that it can come across a little bit almost like snobbish to suggest that the FA Cup doesn't matter or whatever, but again, it's crucially within the context of what we're currently doing, and we've got bigger fish to fry, simply put. So I have no issue with it, and let some other team win it. I mean, Bournemouth. It's worth saying, last season, Man United won it, by the way. Yeah. That's how important this competition is. Man United
and they're
won.
shite.
They're the worst team in the universe, mate. So,
Bournemouth. Let Bournemouth win it.
Yeah, let Bournemouth win it, yeah.
I was thinking about this. This is almost the first true test of Arne Slot as a rotator, as Liverpool manager now. This one, because in the previous phases, you could say, well, if he wants to rest some players for the Champions League because we've got a few points behind, he can. But this is unequivocal. We need to win all of these 5 games. Now we don't. In as much, Josh, as going into them, you need to win them. If we come out the other side and we won 4 out of 5, that's quite respectable and probably okay. But the mindset has got to be to win each and every single one of them. To that end, I think outside of the goalie, I would have said, to your point, Neil, that there's 3 who you almost have no choice but to play in every game, and that's obviously Van Dijk, Gravenberch, and Salah. If Gomez had come back and had a nice afternoon, I'd have gone, oh, that's good, because he can slot in for Konate, maybe at Villa, just to give him a rest. And we do know Konate's legs have, in the past, fallen off. He's back from something, he's playing through pain. So I'm not sure, even now, whether Konate will be asked to play all 5. The rest of it is we're in great shape in terms of we have these options that everybody else, there's a form of yesterday notwithstanding, a like-for-like replacement. So broadly, it's okay. I do wonder, though, although we're saying Salah must play every game, I do wonder whether in the midst of this, maybe by the time we get to Villa, he thinks, I don't know, bring him on 60. I know people got Mo Salah won't stand for that, but we've got to be sensible here, because I tell you what, if by game 4 Salah pulls up with a hamstring, that's a big fucking blow, or Van Dijk, and it's possible.
Well, it's the Wolves one, though, isn't it? That you look at.
It's too early in the sequence, unfortunately.
But I don't know. I'm not sure that Slot will see it that way, because when he talks about resting players, he does talk about giving them a week every 4 or 5 weeks. So he thinks about it in a bigger block than we probably do when we're kind of looking at like 4 or 5 games. So obviously the fact that they've just had a rest in this Plymouth game, if they then have another one after the derby, then you look at it and say, well, so Villa, City, Newcastle, that's a run of 3 in a week. And then after that, there'll be the first leg of the round of 16, but there's still a little bit more space because you've got Southampton at home.
Probably Wednesday, likeliest, I'm not saying it's spot on, but Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday is the likeliest for the round of 16.
Yeah. And then, so after that round of 16 game, you've got Southampton at home, which is another one where you wouldn't rest lots of people, but you can say 3/4 changes. And I think that's probably what it's going to be around. So there might be a couple of those. I still think that I agree with you that there should be a world in which you can say to Salah, for the greater good, you're coming off the bench here. I just don't know whether or not that'll actually happen.
I think the likelier thing is that players are taken off if there's a situation where the game's gone Liverpool's way. And
but they're quite hard. I've tried that thought process. It's only Wolves where you think that's a reasonable likelihood, because this is a tough one. It's the last one I fear for, in a sense, the most, which is Newcastle at home, just because it's at the end of the sequence. It comes 3 days after going to the Etihad. The only saving grace, when we had this early in the season, quite close to literally the sequence, and it ends at St James's Park, and we look leggy. Although we pick ourselves up and nearly win the game, we look leggy. The only thing in this one is, thank God, we're at home, and the crowd could be the energy we need that night.
Absolutely. Okay, then. We are going to Australia with the Anfield Wrap. There are tickets available for one Adelaide show and one Perth show. And Mo, you're going to the US. Have you got dates yet? Is that specific? Hit me with them, Mo. Hit me.
So Wednesday, March the 19th, I will be in Boston at a place called The Chemist. Friday the 21st, I'll be in New York. Not entirely sure off the top of my head where the venue is. And Sunday the 23rd, I will be in Philadelphia, where they will probably all still be drunk from winning the Super Bowl last night.
Well, the sports don't count, Mo. Okay, then. The biggest game in our history is that do check out Mo in any of those 3 locations. If you're around, do get yourself down, and he will tell you where the venues are on his social media at some point, and you can be on top of them. All right, then, the derby. Rob Gutmann, the biggest game in our history.
It is, Neil, it is. And the countdown started when the final whistle blew down at, what's Plymouth's ground called again?
Home Park.
Home Park, yeah. There. Yeah, I'm barely I can barely function in anticipation of this one. I felt confident, very confident about it after Tottenham, and the Plymouth, as Josh says, does not really change this. I think the manager was interesting about it afterwards, talking about the teams where it's all about bloody second ball and them going long. And he actually referenced United being that kind of challenge. Plymouth, at least, even though the same players won't play Plymouth as in the derby, at least there's something for the manager to think about those sort of games play out. I'm glad that Everton, their sequence of being on fire, 3 straight wins has ended. Sort of not prettily, but with home and crucially home defeat. I think that put the doubt back in that the Moyes era isn't necessarily all change. I think that works in our favour. I'm not saying it's the right time to be playing them, but it's a better time to be playing them after losing that. And they had their first team out right against Bournemouth as near as damn.
Really strong 11, yeah.
So it's.
They have a good second half, but they struggle first half.
Let's put it this way. I said it wouldn't be a disgrace if we won 4 out of 5. In fact, it'd be quite decent to win 4 out of this big 5. I wouldn't like to be under pressure by not winning this first one to find we have to then go and win all 4 as we're getting increasingly tired. I think of all of them in this sequence, for every reason you can imagine, this is a big must-win.
On it, Rob, would you rather it was already out the way? I mean, this is the key question, because it's the second going away at the last ever Merseyside derby. It's almost like, or do you feel as though we're likely to get a result? Another way to rephrase it, the Moyes versus Dyche question. They are different managers. They do have different approaches. Everton were caught playing out from the back against Bournemouth on a couple of occasions. I don't think that Moyes has shown in the past he can be a very specific type of manager, but he is trying and tried at West Ham, I think, to be a little bit different. Are you happier that Moyes is in charge, or do you just think it doesn't matter?
I'm closer to it doesn't matter than I'm happier that Moyes is in charge. Again, with the derby, form goes out the window, cliche, sort of the overriding truth, which we don't like, but it is sort of true. I can't ever think I've worried about Everton, what they're tactically going to bring to the table, really, at all, or overly worried about who's in charge. It's just, are they going to turn up in a meaningful way and disrupt us from the football match we want to play in a meaningful way? And it's hard to know that. The more interesting thing is, what does an Arne Slot psychological approach to a derby look like? Can he adjust the mindset of the team so that they take it as, it's like a tough European away. It's a game we're going there to win. Who gives a fuck if it's the last one at Goodison? I mean, I genuinely don't give a fuck that it's the last game at Goodison. I hope it barely enters my thinking. I actually barely give a fuck that it's Everton. If we win that, my first thought is going to be good. 3 points out of the 15 I want us to get. The Everton thing, I mean, I want Liverpool. Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to say, but I want it parked.
No, I think
that's how you need to play.
I was about to say there's this mismatch in it, Josh. I think there's this mismatch in it. It's 16th versus first on the one hand. Exactly, on the other hand, it's this game, and this game multiplied by the other factors. But for me, I feel as though, my genuine opinion, and it's odd because of his history as Everton manager, I feel as though you're likelier to get a 16th versus first game with Moyes as manager than you are necessarily with Dyche, where I think he would have absolutely dogmatically decided it was about territory and about making it brutal and about embracing the crowd. I think that Moyes has still got to do a little bit of, we've got to play a certain way if we're going to stop being 16th and become 13th. It was interesting, post-Bournemouth, Moyes was asked, and one of the things he said was that when I left this club, the two clubs were closer together. I'm back now, and our job is to get back closer to them. I feel as though with Dyche, it would have been one fella who's got a plan for how he plays against Liverpool, combined with the crowds, that as a plan at what it wants to do against Liverpool. I feel as though for the Moyes in this one, yes, the crowd remains a factor, but I just do sort of feel as though it's a David Moyes who I think at times has struggled since he was West Ham manager against more progressive teams in his home matches.
Yeah, I am generally in favour of Moyes versus Dyche when it comes to the Liverpool angle on this. I genuinely think Dyche would take 38 0-0s over the course of the season to ensure safety. Like, he's the least ambitious manager I think I've ever seen. But given that in a Merseyside derby, it would have been very, very low block, very long ball, set pieces. And I think Moyes is not too dissimilar, but I just think Moyes is a bit more, we've got to have a go here at Goodison. It's the last one at Goodison Park, the Everton fans will expect us to have a go, and all that stuff. So I think they will naturally just throw more punches, I think, than Dyche's Everton would have.
But they did last year against us at Goodison, didn't they? They threw a lot of punches at us last year, and it hurt us.
Yeah, but I think Moyes was using box midfields and that against Leicester. You see that recently?
Yeah.
Like three box three and all this stuff, which we just haven't seen at Goodison Park ever, really, as far as I'm concerned. So I hope that there's and he spoke a few times recently about like getting after teams, specifically when they're at home. And I just think that the kind of team that Liverpool are right now, I think it would benefit us to, if you get after us, I think we can punish that better than we will punish a deep lying block, where we're, under pressure to break them down. But, I just think that would be a tricky dynamic for us. So I think if from the off, it's just a bit more of a fight, then I think that would benefit Liverpool personally. But, it's difficult to say.
I agree with that in terms of how they approach the game would help us from this to that one. I think the thing that Moyes gives them that Dyche doesn't is belief in themselves.
Yeah.
So that means it's harder for them it's harder for us to beat them down. So even if we have taken an early lead, they'll still believe, or even if it's 2-0 at half time, they'll still believe, get one, we can get right back into this and make it difficult for them. I think a Dyche team that goes down 2-0, they're already thinking, we just make sure this isn't 4-5 and get out of here alive. So that's a different prospect to deal with. But again, you look at the positives that they've taken from recent games. Like, you look at, I was at the Leicester game, and when Decore scored after 10 seconds, like, Liverpool don't concede that goal. Konate or Van Dijk wins that header. The ball doesn't travel for 50 yards onto Decore's chest. So you can take that out, and you have to look at all of the goals they scored in those two games, and you just think, well, that's the kind of defensive mistake we won't make. That's a mistake we won't make. That's a mistake we won't make. Those teams, Spurs and Leicester, gave them so much encouragement that we hopefully will not.
Does Calvert-Lewin start?
I don't think he's fit.
He's almost certainly not fit. I mean,
because he gave his injury, dog's life.
Yeah, his injury wasn't as bad from the sound of things as the first feared, but I suspect it's still going to be another couple of weeks for Calvert-Lewin. It's Beto. They really struggled to make it stick first half against Bournemouth. They couldn't get out. Bournemouth just ran all over them. Second half, they played a lot better. The new lad came on that they've got in from Flamengo, who was at Southampton. He livened it for them. They looked brighter and better, but I think also Bournemouth were in a little bit of 2-0 up in a cup tie mode at that stage as well. And Bournemouth also made changes that weakened them from the outset, and still were 2-0 up at half time. I think it's an intriguing one. That what I almost don't want is the lesson to be too well learned. If you know what I mean, that's my bigger concern
from Bournemouth.
Yeah. I don't want the lesson to be too well learned, because it was a pretty strong Everton side. For us, Rob, I think I'll come back to the context of the match in a minute, but selection.
Yeah.
I think I can name 10 players.
I think there's only one position up for grabs, isn't there, really?
What do you think it is?
It's the centre forward.
I agree with you.
And my money, just because Arna is, just when you think he's going to make a tweak, he goes, nope, that's my 11, more often than not. But I just about think there's been some signposts here that it's a Darwin Nunez starting situation, this. And so I think it's Gakpo, Nunez and Salah.
I think it's notable that Diaz, Jota and Chiesa all played 90 minutes yesterday.
Absolutely.
And I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it's an interesting one, because the way that he's kind of tried to use it in terms of how he decides is that the whole element of the physical battle and who wants it and who doesn't want it and who's more likely to be dragged out of position by a Diaz. And you think of Everton, Tarkowski and Branthwaite, they probably would quite like the physical battle, and they probably did feel good about how they dealt with Darwin Nunez last season. But I do think that at the moment, based on how we played against Spurs, he can and should be a different proposition this season.
He also has a good first half. He has the worst second half you've ever seen any footballer have. It's a disgrace. His second half performance, genuinely, I think it's amongst the worst performances I've ever seen from a Liverpool player for 45 minutes. But first half, Nunez, he elicits 2 or 3 big saves. He's constantly, for me, he was almost the likeliest when it was all going wrong, going the other way. But then he just absolutely disappears in the second 45.
It's because one of them didn't go in. If one of those goes in, then he has a very different kind of game, and he's very much more, about me imposing my will upon you. And I think that at that point in his career, he was very much living and dying by ball going in net, good, ball not going in net, bad. I think what we're seeing in recent times is, yes, that is still a major part of what he needs to be doing in the game.
It's not his everything, is it?
It's not his everything anymore. Like, I feel like the Spurs performance should be the kind of thing where he says, okay, well, even if I'm not scoring, I'm not getting chances, I have affected this game by making sure that I keep the ball when it comes to me, that I can win the ball back when someone else is there, and I can be an effective and not reckless pressing presence. And if he can do those three things, and the two guys either side of him are still in the goal scoring
And he
form,
gets
they're
an
in.
assist, though, by winning the penalty.
Yeah,
I mean,
he does.
It's a key moment.
And he's done that a few times. And I think if we can convince him that doing that to the high level that you did against Spurs is enough, then I think that we can really use him in this game. I think it's when if he misses a couple of early chances that are quite big, that's when I get concerned.
I think there was which game was it where he wins 3 defensive headers from corners? Is it Tottenham?
That was Tottenham,
Yeah. Again, we know we're going to have to deal with set pieces. I think if there's fine margins of who he's picking, that's another big tick in the Darwin Nunez column.
I agree.
Yeah, I think he was excellent against Spurs. I think it was arguably up there with his most complete performances for Liverpool. I think he's had games where he's been more dangerous, obviously. But his link play, I thought, was really impressive. He connected with his midfield quite well. There was a moment where the ball comes into him in the box and he lays it off to the man next to him with his first touch. Do you remember it?
Szoboszlai,
it's a lovely touch.
Really subtle touch it was. But the evidence that we've seen of Nunez for like 18 months now suggests he's not really capable of that. So to see him do it, perform really well overall as a general play and all this stuff, I think if Slot goes with him in the derby, I think he's doing the right thing, because I do think there's an element of truth to what you said earlier about playing Diaz out of form a little bit and him not really getting back to that against Plymouth. Nunez plays really well against Spurs and to the extent where for me, deserves to stay in the team. So it probably is the only spot up for debate. But I probably lean towards Nunez, although there's like a little voice in the back of my head saying Nunez Merseyside derby. Like there's just red card written all over that, I think, but like hopefully not.
Well, he can be taken off. I mean, I would be if I was. Yes, Van Dijk should put a word in his ear. If that big lunatic gets a booking, then the decision's made for you.
The atmosphere is going to be fiery. I think that's the problem. Like.
The atmosphere is going to be fiery, but that's good, isn't it?
For Nunez, I don't know.
I want football matches played in fiery atmospheres. I don't want football matches played in dead stadia.
Nunez was born in an oven, though, mate. Nunez was born in fire, so...
Yeah, I think, just one point, though. I think Gakpo's fantastic form. I think he owes something to Diaz pulling people out the way and him just having one man to stand up and drop a shoulder and get those fantastic crosses or shots in. Whether that, he did play with Nunez the other night, and it still worked. So maybe I'm talking rubbish, but I think that's going to be an interesting tell. See how that goes. Either we get despite being brilliant, I still think Gakpo's quite a strange player you sometimes think, well, where is he in the game? And then then he's there. So even though he's got nearly 20 goals, I think he's going to have to get 40 to convince me that he's a first choice starter. But at the moment, I'm not arguing with anyone. He's a first choice starter. But I can see there are games where you go, oh no, we're going to need something else here. We're going to need Diaz in that. Well, let's just see how it goes. We're going to need all of them, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. On the kind of Nunez fire point, I think the example of Richarlison on Thursday would probably be enough to say, see what he did, don't do that.
Absolutely. All right, fabulous stuff from start to finish. Excellent indeed. Thank you very much to Peloton, partnering with us through the course of this season, just as they are the official fitness digital partner of Liverpool Football Club. Thank you very much in the background to Milo and to Paddy, sorting loads and loads of bits and pieces out. Andy for looking after every bit of audio, but I thought that they were second to none all the way through. I might get more people to rate things out of 10 as this wears on. So it's been an absolute pleasure to Rob Gutmann, Mo Stewart and Josh Williams. Check out everything that everyone's got going on in a number of different ways. And like I did before the first time this game was meant to happen, I just sort of think that at no point has a Merseyside derby been named after Mo Salah.